Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. In this video, we are going over Alpha 4.3, some of my first impressions on the patch, as well as just kind of where the patch is going right now. We have a new ship from Kruger Intergalactic to kind of just speculate about and see a sneak peek over, as well as discuss the somewhat common topic of CIG's communication over the past few weeks, especially with Alpha 4.2.1, the global event having a bunch of issues, and then just generally the direction for Star Citizen over the past couple months, if we're going to be honest, hasn't been super great. So we're going to just be discussing that a little bit today. But before we get into it, if you are enjoying the content, feel free to stick around and subscribe. I do have channel memberships open if you wanted to go the extra mile. And feel free to join the community Discord. I would love to have you there, and I will have a link for that down below. Besides that, let's get into all things Alpha 4.3, new ship, and just CIG and Star Citizen. Now, I'll start this off with saying for the most part, I was pretty wrong about 4.3. Initially, I thought after they took out the cooperative zones, it was just going to kind of be a gutted patch. I didn't really think there was going to be much of a PvE experience there, and I really just didn't have a ton of faith it would be a lot of fun. But to my surprise, it was actually a really cool experience. And getting into the location aspect of it, the Onyx facilities, kind of the highlight of the patch, it was really, really unique. And I think the most exciting aspect of it was the fact that the Onyx facilities are brand new assets, at least as far as we're concerned. They haven't been pulled from anywhere else than, Arena Commander or Star Citizen in the verse before. These are brand new assets that are completely new to players. And as a Star Citizen player, that is super refreshing to see. Now, that being said, I didn't get a ton of time with the actual missions themselves in these facilities, but the general vibe and aesthetic of these areas was super cool to kind of explore in and just see what was going on. And then actually kind of starting the mission that I was doing, it was a unique narrative experience. This is the first time ever in Star Citizen history I can say that I was genuinely somewhat following a narrative through the actual game contract rather than something like the Star Citizen YouTube channel or a Spectrum post. Genuinely, I felt like I was somewhat experiencing it in real time, even if it wasn't to the fullest capacity. It was still super unique and something that we just don't see in Star Citizen very often. Now, outside of the location itself, which I still do very much love, the contract and the narrative aspect to it was something that we just haven't felt in Star Citizen before. And I know I'm saying that a lot, but that's kind of the vibe of 4.3 right now. Now, the contract, I didn't get too far into it, unfortunately, just because it glitched out a little bit, at least as far as I'm concerned. And then the server was kind of crapping itself a bit. So didn't get to do much there. But from what I did get to do, it was pretty cool. I got to kill a couple NPCs that were very clearly kind of set up to be where they were at. And then this is a very Star Citizen thing to be excited about. But if you remember back in CitizenCon 2023 with all the hand animations and being able to press buttons and pull down levers, there was genuinely some animations to pull down levers in the facility, and doing it and feeling your character actually do it was really, really cool. Again, this is a very Star Citizen thing. This is just a basic animation, but by itself, it was a really nice thing to add, and it just added that much more to the immersion that made the experience feel that much better. Now, again, this is just my gameplay experience, so if you don't like this stuff, or if you're a PvP player and you just hate this content, that's totally okay, and I would love to hear your thoughts as to why down below. Now, that being said, when it comes to Star Citizen and what we're actually getting here in this patch, I think this is some really solid groundwork for future content. That being said, by itself, I do think it is pretty solid, maybe not the most replayable, but I think this is a super nice step in the right direction, especially with the, CitizenCon 2023 animations, finally getting those in. I know that we've been waiting a ton of time for that. And I think just generally speaking, getting brand new assets that we haven't seen before is really refreshing as a Star Citizen player. Now, to not jump the gun or anything like that, but I think there could be a lot of potential momentum that comes with this patch. I think it's going to naturally get a decent amount of solid reception, especially since it's more on the PvE side, which I'm glad I was wrong about. And I really do think that there's a lot of good to come out of this patch. Now, if we're going to be honest here, though, CIG has a bad habit of releasing these patches and then just completely falling short like a month later. And I know that there's a really solid chance that just happens again. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic about it, but I really do hope that CIG takes this opportunity to release something that's fresh, new, and just not really heard of when it comes to Star Citizen and maintain that momentum as we get through the rest of this year. I know the focus has been on Squadron this year. I know that that is really important for them, and I really hope they are getting that thing finished up. But I think Star Citizen as a whole has been suffering so much because of it. And I hope that with such a solid possible release on our hands, that CIG does finally take the opportunity to kind of run with that momentum and make sure that player retention's high, players are engaged, and they're generally pushing towards the finish line that is 1.0. Now, before we get too deep into that type of conversation, I did really quickly actually want to go over a potential ship or potentially two ships that could be releasing in the near future. Now, the first one here comes from a sneak peek that we have a couple days ago. It's very clearly a Kruger ship. It is called what we know from data mine files, the Kruger L-21 Wolf. And off the bat, I personally think it's a racing ship, just given what we see with the clock. Don't really know why a non racing ship would have a clock, but then again, it could just be an aesthetic thing. So, not too much to go on there. On the other hand, we actually know of a potentially opposite or another ship coming from Kruger, or just more information on this ship specifically. And let me kind of elaborate on that real quick. So there's a CitizenCon Direct contest going on where you can make a trailer or something. I think it's a video of some sort that you can get judged on and potentially earn prizes. And one of the prizes is a quote unquote yet to be announced light fighter from Kruger Intergalactic, hot off the assembly line and built for the bold. And yes, comes with LTI. Now, I could just be completely delusional, and these are the same ships, the one we're seeing in the sneak peek, and the one that is a prize for the CitizenCon Direct thing. Or it could be, a potential racing ship, and then a variant of that is a light fighter as well. Again, not much to go off here, so not really worth to speculate over and talk about too much. But I did want to inform you guys that there is at least one new Kruger ship and potentially two coming in the near future. Now, back to the conversation about what's going on with CIG and communication and just Star Citizen as a whole. I think across the board this year has been a mixed bag. There's been some pretty solid good and then some pretty solid bad. And I think the content has been great, but it doesn't really hold players over for as long as they might want them to. I think honestly, after maybe like a month of playing some of the content we've been getting, it gets pretty old because there's not a ton of replayability. Now, that being said, I don't think any of this has been bad. There just hasn't been much progress towards 1.0. There hasn't been a bunch of feature progress. Everything has kind of stayed the same, just with a little bit of extra content here and there after every couple months or so. Now, that's a very good thing for the game, and I'm glad they're at least doing that whilst they've been working on Squadron and making sure that gets ready for release. Though that being said, Star Citizen is the baby that kind of funds this whole circus going on. And as much as I respect them for getting Squadron in a really solid place, I would love it if they communicated a little bit better about not only their long term plans, but just generally across the board about Star Citizen. And with how 4.2.1 has gone and just their communication with that, it's been pretty frustrating. I mean, a lot of players, including myself, have kind of clocked out of wanting to do this event because it's not really worth the time and energy to go in and see if that game breaking bug, or at least the event breaking bug, is still in the patch. And is it even worth it to go try and finish it, or should I just wait until the next big thing, which in this case is 4.3? And honestly, I think CIG really, really needs to figure out their communication when it comes to these issues. Of course, the preference is that it releases with no issues, but at the end of the day, if it's Star Citizen, it's probably going to have issues. It's just a matter about how they communicate with that with us and just giving us a little bit more transparency as to what is going on and how they're planning on fixing it. And when it comes to the long term of Star Citizen, it has also fallen short an incredible amount, especially for 2025. Now, we have things like CitizenCon Direct coming up, which are a huge event. I know it's only 2 hours of video content this year, but it's still going to be 2 hours of content that we have never seen before that should show us a lot of really cool stuff. That being said, though, CIG needs to stick the landing after CitizenCon. They need to keep that momentum going into the next year, especially with next year being the first year ever that CIG releases a actual product to the public. Not early access, but an actual product with Squadron. Now, as much as I love the fact that they are heads down working on Squadron right now, I worry for Star Citizen. I think that the communication has been really poor. We just don't know where they're going with Star Citizen. And with Squadron releasing next year, I would really, really hope they have some pretty firm plans on making sure that Star Citizen, as in a good place or is the best possible place for whenever Squadron releases. And I'm not saying that it needs to be like 1.0 releasing alongside Squadron. I think that'd be kind of crazy. I don't even think that's even possible for CIG. But I think it really needs to be in a solid place so they can really capture that player base that goes to Squadron and get them over to Star Citizen as well. So that we have a even bigger MMO on our hands. Now, that being said, we know that CIG knows this. I mean, they're not stupid over there. They are fully aware of the fact that they need to capitalize on Squadron's release so that they can get the most amount of players and funding for Star Citizen. But us players, the ones that are actually playing Star Citizen now, that are playing and trying to see the long term vision of this game, are just completely left in the dark. And don't get me wrong, they have every right to do that, and they have been doing it this year where they just really haven't give us a lot to kind of expect for this year. It helps keep hype in for the most part, but at the same time, I don't think it really helps in terms of the long-term vision of this game, especially those who have been here for, 10 years at this point. And don't get me wrong, none of us are a slave to Star Citizen. We can go out and play whatever game we want to. I'm super excited to play, Battlefield 6 when that releases in the next couple months. I think that'll help hold me over so that I'm not constantly thinking about Star Citizen or trying to play a game that really isn't in the most fun state. But at the same time, I would love it to just know a little bit more as to what CIG wants to do with this game over the next year and a half or so, rather than just be sitting here hoping that they are doing the right thing. Again, and I saw this comment last week or a week or two ago saying hope is not a strategy. And I do actually respect that comment because honestly, that's what we do here a lot as Star Citizen fans. We hope for the very best and we get it. And typically it falls a little bit short. But if CIG can really nail down the CitizenCon this year, keep the momentum going, then maybe we don't have to hope as much for a good game. Rather, we can just kind of expect it, and instead of every time we wait for a new patch, wondering if it's going to break the game or if it's still going to be fun or anything like that, we can just continue forward, knowing that Star Citizen, one of the games that we love as players, is in fact making progress and will at some point fully release. Now, that is it. That is my tangent. That is my rant. I apologize for taking so much time there, but I did kind of just want to discuss CIG's communication and how it, in my opinion, has been falling short even a little bit more than it normally has, if we're going to be completely honest here. But I would love to hear your thoughts down below, whether that be the positive side of 4.3, how you feel about that patch, the new Kruger ship, or just how you feel about Star Citizen, CIG, and where we've been going over the past year. I'm really hoping that as we go into 2026, things start to take a little bit more of a change in the right direction for this game and Squadron. But again, that is just hopeful and wishful thinking. So hopefully that does come to fruition in the next couple of months. Besides that, thank you so much for sticking around and watching the video to the end. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one.